Hungary lies in the centre of Europe, at the intersection of different cultures, owing to which it is a rich and diverse repository of living heritage. The areas of manifestation of intangible cultural heritage were made the focus of scholarly research as early as on the turn of the 20th century. Tradition still living at the time in everyday practice and in its original function was documented, archived, catalogued and processed. Ethnographic collections have become readily available and popular thanks to a series of important publications and to the national traditionalist movement. With the help of scholarly and scientific organisations, educational programmes, public education networks and civilian communities, the traditions live on with both their original and new functions. They reach the broadest audiences, and to this day they have been able to contribute to the continuity of culture, to handing down knowledge, to enjoyable learning, and to help heritage live on locally and even in urban settings. The Hungarian linguist, folk music collector Béla Vikár was the first in Europe to record folk songs on a phonograph in 1895. From the early 1900s onwards, Béla Bartók and Zoltán Kodály launched a comprehensive and scholarly folk music collecting programme that extended to all Hungarian language-speaking areas. This marked the beginning of academic musical folkloristics. Their results would soon contribute to international comparative folk music research. The inquiry into the origins and interrelations of cultures that had been living side by side for centuries led Bartók, Kodály and their pupils to explore the folk music of the neighbouring countries and even further afield. They recorded, noted down, analysed and arranged a great many Slovakian, Romanian and Serbian melodies. Kodály researched the Finno-Ugrian peoples. Bartók performed exemplary seminal work in collecting folk music in Algeria and Turkey. László Lajta, an official in the International Commission of Popular Arts and Traditions of the League of Nations from 1928, and one of the proponents of the founding of the UNESCO's International Folk Music Council, produced many important monographs on instrumental folk music. Bartók, Kodály and their followers created a considerable archive even by European standards, with over 200,000 melodies arranged according to Bartók's catalogue order. Béla Bartók, Zoltán Kodály and László Lajta dipped into this pure source, that is folk music, for their world-famous compositional oeuvre. The creator of a new independent musical idiom, Béla Bartók, is one of the most often played composers in the world. The development of a musical vernacular from early childhood onwards, in the framework of musical education in schools, has become a known and applied practice around the world as the Kodály concept. Hungary nominated the method to the Register of Best Safeguarding Practices in 2013. The systematic collection of folk dances too began in the entire Hungarian language area, among ethnicities in Hungary and in the neighbouring countries. György Martin was among the first to document dance processes on film. Martin and his followers revealed the Hungarian dance dialects and their links to European dance culture. The Hungarian-born Rudolf Laban developed a system of notation similar to musical notation for dance, called Labo notation or kinetography Laban, with which every movement in dance can be described and analysed. In addition to early research in folk music, dance and customs in Hungary, systematic investigation in folk architecture and craftsmanship have all contributed to the immense and continuously growing archives of intangible and tangible cultural heritage. Part of a national network of historic scholarly institutions is the Hungarian Academy of Sciences Institute for Musicology. Representing Hungarian public collections is the Museum of Ethnography, with a digital archive of ethnographic films, and the Hungarian Open Air Museum. The Hungarian Heritage House was created for the preservation of living folk art, which also functions as a service centre, helping the survival, education, presentation of intangible cultural heritage, making the sources available, and the transmission of good practices. Concurrently with scholarly efforts, the needs arose for the widespread promotion of the living and available knowledge of traditional communities, with a view to revival. In an effort to present folk culture in urban environments, as early as in the 1930s, the so-called Gyöngyös Bokréta folk groups would travel from the villages to Budapest to perform music and dance. Growing into a movement, they contributed to preserving local traditions, costume, dance, music, customs, and craftsmanship. Launched in the 1960s, the televised folk music competition Fly Peacock presented the most gifted advocates of folk heritage as role models and proved that large numbers of young people held an interest in folk culture. The community cohesive force of tradition, folk music and folk dance made a comeback with new functions. burgeoning need for personally experiencing tradition and making it a way of life was largely due to the concept of the dance house movement. Drawing from the pure spring was the result of active participation on the part of the communities, which abandoned passivity for new personal functions. Knowledge and practice acquired through personal experience attracted hundreds of thousands of young city and country people to authentic folk culture. Today, when the dance house movement is over 40 years old, folk dance, folk music and craftsmanship are practiced across generations. The conscious use of the early research and collections, the performance practices learnt from the authentic informants, and relying on education and the institutional network of public education, the so-called Tanzhaus or dance house method was entered in the Register of Best Safeguarding Practices in 2011 as being the Hungarian model of preserving intangible cultural heritage. 2007 marks the start of tertiary education in folk music at the new independent folk music department at the Liszt Academy of Music. As a result, teachers holding a university degree in folk music teaching are able to teach folk music at every level of the educational system.
Sej szombat este kinyitom az ablakot, onnan nézem a ragyogós csillagot. Ahán csillag ott fent ragyog az égen, sej annyi csóktól maradt.
Hungary was among the first countries internationally to recognise the outstanding representatives of communities preserving intangible cultural heritage. Under a scheme not unlike the Living Human Treasures programme, the Hungarian National Prize awardees of the Master of Folk Art has gone to over 500 recipients since 1953. Best Young Talents have been awarded the Young Master of Folk Art Prize. The Folk Craftsmanship Award applied folk artist goes to the best in their field. Since Hungary ratified the UNESCO's Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2006, it has set out to identify and catalogue intangible cultural heritage around the country. A national inventory was established in 2008, which currently consists of 19 members, 3 of which appear in UNESCO's representative list, and 1 method in the Register of Best Safeguarding Practices. Consciously advocating, preserving and transmitting their heritage, the bearer communities are members of the National Inventory of Intangible Cultural Heritage, and jointly they regularly participate at the International Gathering of Intangible Cultural Heritage, which has for many years been organised at the Open Air Museum. Organised under the auspices of UNESCO, The event is Hungary's celebration of intangible cultural heritage, the bearer communities and cultural diversity. The itinerant exhibition, organised on the 10th anniversary of the creation of the convention, brilliantly represents Hungary's professional commitment and results. The exhibition opening featured folk singer Marta Sebestyén, holder of the UNESCO Artist for Peace Award.
Kicsi madárból meg nékem mikor lesz a nyár, mondd meg nékem, kicsi madár, mikor lesz a nyár. Húsvét után tavasz világ, akkor lesz a nyár. Húsvét után tavasz világ, akkor lesz a nyár.
Successfully promoting cultural heritage, the Peacock Television Talent Competition was relaunched in 2012 after a break of 5 decades. Béla Bartók and Zoltán Kodály would never have imagined that in 2014 a young girl would bring this ancient pentatonic song collected by Bartók alive so beautifully. Millions of television viewers, the bearer communities keeping the traditions alive, the hundreds of folk dance groups, the folk song circles, bands, singers, craftsmen and women, the dance houses, the popular folk art camps, a fully functional institutionalised folk art education at primary, secondary and tertiary levels, all go to show that in Hungary, in the heart of Europe, the interest in culture-enriching heritage and renewing traditional cultures is unbroken and is forever growing.
Kucok Balázs, teremjen hát országunkban jó volt áldomány.